Senator Back.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. I rise this evening to speak on the scourge of animal cruelty and its increase in this community, the efforts that I'm making through a bill proposed in this place on the 11th of February, and the vitriolic, not surprising attack on me and this legislation by animal activists. Madam Acting Deputy President, the bill very briefly undertakes two areas. The first is the fact that if a person sees what they believe to be malicious cruelty to an animal or animals, they would report that in the least possible time, and they would provide visual image, if they've taken that image, of that cruelty, so that if indeed it is happening, it can be inspected, examined. If there are animals at risk, others suffering the same fate, it can be stopped, and indeed if there are the capacity for prosecution of the perpetrators, then that is what would flow from it. The second element of the legislation, Madam Acting Deputy President, goes to the actions of a person who would, for whatever reason, intimidate, threaten, attack a person or persons associated with an animal enterprise, or indeed to invade that property to place animals and indeed humans at risk, in the case of occupational health and safety, in the case of animals from a welfare point of view, or indeed from a biosecurity aspect. Let me make the point strongly: nothing in this bill prevents a person acting legally in any way at all. Once a person has presented that material together with the evidence, they can go to the media, they can continue to collect more evidence. In fact, nothing at all prevents a person under this bill from carrying on in a legal, lawful way to gather more information, to go to the press, to do whatever they want to do, contrary, unfortunately, to the vitriol and the stupidity which has been visited upon me. What is the scope of this particular issue, Madam Acting Deputy President? Let me go to the annual reports of the RSPCA going back the last few years. Just from 2008-9, 50,700 complaints resulting in 200 successful convictions. Go forward to 2011-12, 52,000 with 300 convictions. Last to 2013-14, 59,000 complaints with a measly 230 convictions. And I'm trying to do something about improving prosecutions, Madam Acting Deputy President. Nationally, 1,100 complaints a week. In my own state of Western Australia, 3,664 cases in 11-12, doubling to 6,100 the following year. And the level of convictions, a measly 0.35 of 1% of those complaints. And I am bringing legislation into this place so that the visual images of that particular cruelty would be made available to authorities so that they might be able to get on top of the issue. I go to an article in yesterday's conversation by two people, a Jed Goodfellow and a Professor Peter Radden. Goodfellow, from his bio, policy officer for the RSPCA, been a prosecutor for RSPCA South Australia and an inspector of RSPCA Queensland. Well, if I go and have a look at some recent South Australian and Queensland figures for complaints and convictions, 0.6 of 1% in South Australia, a mere 30 out of 4,700 complaints, and in Queensland 0.12%. 222 convictions of nearly 19,000. But this is what the two of them wrote in yesterday's conversation about my program. First of all, they've said my bill has nothing to do with animal protection. What an amazing statement from two people of supposedly superior legal capacity. They say that, and I'm quoting, by inhibiting these inconvenient investigations that have so long been successful exposing animal cruelty. Nothing in my bill prevents a person from continuing investigations. They make the amazing statement, Madam Acting Deputy President, the bill requires all persons who record malicious cruelty to report it, and then go on to say, notably, the bill is not concerned with those who may witness the cruelty in the first hand. How can anybody record it without witnessing it first hand? They make the case, or try to make the case, that in some way I am trying to protect people who are in positions of responsibility within an industry or a business that involved animals. Nothing in my legislation, Madam Acting Deputy President, comments at all on the actions or inactions of a person, whether they work for an industry or work as an employee of an animal enterprise. Absolutely and utterly nothing. They make the point that the reporting requirement will effectively stop private investigations in their tracks. I haven't read that in the bill. I haven't read it in the explanatory memorandum. It's not in the second reading speech, and I say this evening it is not in the legislation. So what are their motives in actually coming out with these statements? I don't know. And this is the gentleman who tells us that he has been associated with the RSPCA in 2 states where their success of prosecutions has been abysmal. What I am trying to do, as indeed is the role of CCTV in hotspot areas in different locations around Australia, is to provide visual imagery so that responsible authorities have actually got something with which to prosecute people. I go secondly to an open advertisement in today's mainstream media, an open letter to the Australian public. Half-page ad. Don't know what it costs for a half-page ad in the Oz. They must be very, very well resourced, these animal activist groups. But what they're saying in this, and I'm quoting, is that the bill reduces the capacity to gather evidence and build a case. How does it do that, Madam Acting Deputy President? What it does is require someone who actually comes upon evidence of what they believe to be malicious cruelty to report it and to provide supporting evidence. They then go on to say something around the recent expose of animal cruelty within the greyhound racing industry would likely have been a criminal act. Let me make this point, if I may, Madam Acting Deputy President. I think I'm right in the quote. I've made it several times in the media and I haven't yet been corrected. The footage that we saw in the Four Corners program in mid-February, coincidentally, amazing coincidence that I brought the bill in on the Wednesday, the 11th of February, and the Four Corners program was the following Monday evening, Madam Acting Deputy President. I won't reflect on that anymore. But it is the case, as I understand, that that footage in Victoria at that training track for greyhounds was commenced originally in November of 2014, and I believe I'm right when I say that the RSPCA were given that footage on Wednesday, the 11th of February, and they closed the training track up the same day or the next day. It then becomes incumbent to ask the question, if the motivation was indeed animal protection and animal welfare, upon what premise would people have held that footage for a 3-month period, allowing the cruelty of those animals to continue, when indeed the RSPCA, as I understand it, was able to close up that training track and cease that cruelty literally within hours of being presented with the information. In this particular advertisement in today's newspaper, they go on about the term ag-gag, which I take to mean, Deputy President, the willingness or the legislation that would stop people from actually reporting. That's what I understand gag to mean. Well, how you can apply that to a bill that, far from gagging a person, Deputy President, it requires them, if they see what they believe to be malicious cruelty, it requires them to go to a responsible authority and to present that information. With regard to people who might be trying to covertly obtain information, I only make this point. Nothing in my bill prevents or precludes any person from acting legally. If they wish to protest, if they wish to gather outside a facility, all of that is legal. Any person in this country can act legally. But we must not take the law into our own hands. The legislation provides that a person would report that. Deputy President, in summary, let me say this. This is either about cruelty or it is not. It is either about a moral obligation to act. It is, in my view, the concern of the welfare and the well-being and the protection of animals, and I'm at a loss to know how holding that footage for 3 months works. Where is the test of human decency in an action that fails to protect the well-being of animals?
Thank you,